Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to Nifty Methods CMP webinar series. We're excited today to have Tom Pasha, who is one of my favorite presenters and always a wealth of knowledge when talking about everything hotels, food, beverage, contracting, sourcing, you name it, he knows it. Tom, tell us a little bit more about yourself and exactly what we're going to be talking about today.
Well, thank you, Lindsay. It's going to be a good show today. I've been a meeting planner for the last 20 years, and then for the next hour, though, I'm going to be a hotel guy again. So we're going to go back in time and actually learn about catering and how to negotiate better catering deals by finding out how hotels really work.
Awesome. Well, let's get to it.
Okay, well, very good. And again, I appreciate everybody coming to the program. My name again is Tom Pasha. I've been doing this way too long. I've been a meeting planner for over 20 years. Prior to that, I was with Hyatt Hotels for over 20 years, and I worked at 12 Hyatts around the country. And you see on my background here, I actually, before that, started off in the operation. And I was in hotels since age 15 here in Orlando. I was a garde manger, which is the cold food prep. I worked in soups and sauces. That's the saucier, line cook, grill cook, banquet sous chef, all sorts of kitchen positions. Plus, I was the head dishwasher of a couple big hotels. After all this experience, I got into sales with Hyatt Hotels. I was a catering manager and then on as 6 times as director of sales. And then I started the national sales office for Hyatt. So I did the whole tour. And about, like I said, 20 years ago, I started Contact Planning. And we're a national third-party meeting planning company. And we do meetings that have a golf element. So what we can do is actually book the meetings, but then also book the rounds. If you have a golf tournament or a scramble or any of the golf events, we help with those. But in addition to all that, what I try to do is teach meeting planners how hotels work. But the idea is that if you know how a hotel really works, you can be a better meeting planner and be a more effective manager. Then go ahead and click the slide here. And like I said, today we're going to be talking about food and beverage. And food and beverage is amazing because it's such a huge operation. It's a massive part of a hotel's income, but a lot of times as meeting planners, we don't negotiate it as much as we could and should. So what we want to talk about today is how to get hotels to fight for your business, to compete for your business, and you can be a better meeting planner and negotiator as a result. So first of all, in food and beverage, basically the department is restaurants, bars, room service, banquets, and hospitalities. And basically any way we can serve you a sandwich or pour you a drink, we are going to do that, okay? Amazingly though, even though we can charge $100 a gallon for a gallon of coffee, we don't make any money in food and beverage because it costs a ton for food and beverage to be served in a hotel. The income of food and beverage, typically a third of that income will go out the door just paying for the payroll in food and beverage. It's a huge and expensive group of people to pay, okay? But what we need to do, we gotta have good food and beverage in order to fill the rooms. Because in rooms, if you've seen my entire presentation, rooms, we get 80% profit. Food and beverage, we might get 20, 25% profit overall, but we need good food and beverage in order to fill the rooms upstairs. The problem with food and
I'm going to bring your flow, but we had a quick question come in.
Sure.
So someone said that they saw a recent presentation based off the American Express Global Travel Report saying that they heard that food and beverage costs on a whole and labor are going up 2 to 3%. Is that going to become, do you know that that's true? Or is that something you're seeing a trend on? Or is it something
probably actually low? That's actually low from what I'm seeing. Is that from what I'm seeing and hearing in the business is because of, let's say, tariffs and because of trade imbalances and because of currency exchanges, a lot of our costs are going to go up. And a lot of hotels actually are kind of offsetting their increases. They're trying not to increase prices, but they're trying to increase the service charges. And we'll talk about that in a second. The way hotels work is that if you have, say, food sales, take out food costs, you have food profit. But if you have a service charge, there's no assigned expense to a service charge. So it's 100% profit. A lot of hotels are trying to mask the idea of increasing pricing by increasing the service charges. So be aware, it is going to keep getting higher, okay? Any other questions? Okay. Okay, and then anyway, so the other thing to be aware of with food and beverage, we can't use frozen food. We can't use pre-processed food. Everything's got to be fresh and brought in, produced right there, because again, we have to have a high level of product quality in order to fill the rooms upstairs. Banquets and beverage are the most profitable sections of the food and beverage department. So for the meeting planners on this call, see what you can do to find out how much did you spend in banquets, how much do you spend in beverage. And actually, if you have a group that does a lot of time in the casino or the spa or plays the golf or any of those other ways of generating revenue, if you can tell me, the hotel guy, what kind of revenue you can bring, you can be in a position to have me as a hotel guy and other hotels compete for your business. We want business that has good catering, because catering is the part of the food and beverage that we get to keep. And go ahead and flip the slide. So as I said, hotels need catering business. Meetings and conventions are incredibly important. We didn't build these gorgeous hotels with massive amounts of meeting space just because we didn't know what to do with our money. We built them as a way of generating revenue upstairs to fill up all those rooms upstairs. Number one. Also, group rooms are revenue drivers. As you see there, a normal guest who's on a normal business trip and he's going to make 2 or 3 sales calls, he might have a drink in the bar, he might have breakfast in the restaurant, but he's not going to spend a lot of money. If he's with a group, they could be doing catering, golf, spa, gaming, and all sorts of ways of spending more money. And again, catering is 40% profit, so we want to maximize whatever catering we can. So the point is, for the people on this call, if you're having good catering, you can be in a position to have hotels to compete for your business. The highest F&B profit is in banquets and beverage. In banquets, it could be 40% profit. In beverage, it should be actually 75 to 80% profit. So hotels build meeting space to solicit and book group business. That's why we got all that space. Convention hotels are designed with group meeting space to fill those rooms. So again, if you give me some catering, I can get you a better deal. And go ahead. As I said, kind of the in-house joke about food and beverage, we call it the L side of the P&L. A P&L is a profit and loss statement. And we know in the rooms, we actually keep a lot, we keep 80% profit. But if I can make my food and beverage department make any kind of profit in outlets, which are all the restaurants and bars, we might make 15% profit. In banquets, though, we make 40% profit. And the reason that is, like I said, is that the food and beverage is much more labor and materials intensive. We've got to bring in an executive chef, and he or she is typically the highest paid person in that building. He or she, the executive chef, is typically higher paid than the general manager. And when you hire an executive chef, you're not getting just him or her. You're getting the executive chef, sous chef, which is the second chef, sauciers, garde-mangers. Saucier is the sauce and soup person. Garde-manger is the cold food prep. And it's an entire team of people that come into the kitchen, okay, with the chef, number one. And then also, as I said earlier, ingredients got to be fresh. It's got to be done correctly. It's got to be produced and baked right there. Otherwise, the quality goes down and we're not able to fill the rooms upstairs. And just the amount of equipment in one of my hotels, again, I was responsible for the cleanliness of a 1,000-room hotel. I had 5 kitchens, and each one of the dishwashing machines was between $25,000 and $30,000 for a dish machine. It's very expensive, and if one breaks down, it takes an army of people to get the thing fixed, and it's got to be fixed immediately. So there's all sorts of costs involved in food and beverage. So that's how in food and beverage, if we can make 20% overall, that's really good. But again, we want as much banquet revenue as we can, and that's why catering is the place to go if you're in food and beverage. And go ahead. And then the next part is when we are assigning rooms, number one, as I said, we want to make sure that you're booking food and beverage, booking catering. But this is very important. These items here is that there's some revenue, that hotel revenue math, okay, that we actually look at. When we are looking at a piece of business, we'll look at how much meeting space you're using. And typically, if each group room that we have, we will assign about 100, 125 square feet of space per room per day. So if I have a 500-room hotel and I anticipate 100 rooms of individual transient travel and 400 rooms of group travel, with 400 rooms, I need 100 square feet per room. So I need about 40,000 square feet of space, which is a fair amount of space. So what I need to do is, if I have a group that has more than 100 square feet per room, they're what we call a space hog. and they may not be a great piece of business for us. If they're using less than 100 square feet, that's a good piece of business. So again, the meeting planners on this call, think about that. Take your program, take your POE, your program of events, and see how much meeting space you're using on an actual day-by-day basis. If you're using less than 100 square feet, that's great. If it's more, then you're actually weakening your negotiating position. If you want hotels to fight for your space, you got to get that to that 100 square feet or less. Okay, a couple ways you can do that. As I said, minimal breakouts. Some people, I have groups that say they need 6 or 7 breakouts, but they only have 2 or 3 sessions assigned. So rather than do 6 or 7 in the course of the day, maybe they can use the 3 groups twice, or 3 rooms twice, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. Do they have to go with 6 breakouts all day? If you can minimize your number of breakouts, that's one way. Also using the general session as a breakout. Hotels like that because we figure if it's going to be the general session plus 5, that's the same as 6 breakouts. Okay, meeting space matches the room block. You'll see when you look at a hotel, there's typically a curve where it might be, say, 50 rooms one night, then 75, then 200, 200, then 75, then 50, kind of a curve. And what you want to do is make sure that the curve of your meeting space matches the curve of your room block. So you're not setting up with a 3-day setup at the beginning or a 2-day tear down at the end to make sure that the space matches the room block. Because if it matches, that's a good piece of business. If you've got a big early setup or a long teardown, that actually hurts your negotiating. Another thing is that if you can be flexible, the meeting planners, if you, or on this call, if you can see that you can be flexible, you can shift to the week before, or shift to the week after, or move it just a day or 2 in either direction in the same day. If you can do that, in all likelihood, when you call me, I probably don't have the exact dates you want, but if you can be flexible just a little bit, if you can help me, I can actually help you. Okay, I can move you into that, into the a date that we can both work with. The other part is, like I said, is that you can bring me your rooms revenue and tell me how much of that is going to be. If you've got that, again, that's 80% profit. So I'm going to really push for that. And then, as I said, catering is the second largest department behind the rooms department, and it's 40% profit. So if you can give me that and give me as much catering as you can, I can take it to my bosses and get it approved. It used to be, as you know, you talk to the sales manager, he or she would look at the space and, yes, I've got it, here's my deal, here's my rates, we'll take care of you. Now what they have to do is they've got to take your offer, your group, and take it to their business review meeting. And every morning they've got to meet with their general manager and director of revenue management. And what they do is they see, is this the best piece of business for this set of dates? And if it is, let's take it. If it's not, then we got to move it or shift it or go with another piece of business. But one way or the other, you have to negotiate. You got to get the hotel to the point where they want to compete and fight for your group. And the other part is here is that we talked about the 125 square feet of space per day. The next part here is $125 plus. So when you add the tax and service charge, that's typically what large convention hotels are currently shooting for to determine a good piece of catering. So if you want to get hotels to fight for your business, take a look and see what you're spending on your catering. And if you're in that range, that's a very good group. Hotels will fight for that group. It's 125 plus. It's 125, as I said, but then that plus, it's a service charge plus the tax. The service charge, as I said, could be anywhere from 22 to even 26% of the 125. So that's another $25 to $30. And as I said, that's 100% profit. That goes right from the top line of the food and beverage page to the bottom line. There's no assigned expense. So they get to keep all of it. So that's a really good piece of business if you're spending that amount of money. The other thing is, we talked about that hospitality and reception revenue. I love a good bar. I put my way through college pouring drinks, and lots of hotels, if they can have a good group, I have several groups that are exceptional drinkers, they make no sense at all to take the group except for the fact they're good catering and great bars. Okay, if you need to get more bars and more revenue, you might consider, as I said here, a sponsored events. Do you have vendors or suppliers or someone who could sponsor hospitalities? I actually, one of my hotels, we had ICW groups. We actually had a sales department where we would call your vendors. We would ask you to give us your vendor list. We would call them and see if they'd like to book hospitalities. And we would take that hospitality revenue and apply that against your F&B minimum. So it all can be done. If you have sponsored events or you have some now, my advice would be to see if you can get more so you can get, again, hotels to fight for your business. Know your numbers. The with them is what's in it for me. Know your numbers and you get the hotels to compete for your group. Go ahead.
Got a couple of questions that came in. So tell us a little bit more about how you were able to reach out to the vendors. Was that something that, so I've brought sponsors in and it's something where your sales team does it? Do you take a commission or is it just out of the goodness of your heart because you're wanting to help us meet our F&B minimum?
Oh yeah, we would actually, if it was at the Hyatt Regency O'Hare and the Hyatt Regency Chicago, is that if we had a group that had vendors, we'd ask them permission. Can we call your vendors to solicit hospitalities? And they would give us the list of whoever their vendors would be. And we would call them saying that ABC Corporation asked us to call you. We have some opening possibilities for a sponsorship. Would you like to sponsor a hospitality or a reception or wine with dinner, whatever it might be? And we increased our in-house sales. Major convention hotels do that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I've never had a convention hotel reach out and do that, even for citywide. And I love that from a partnership perspective because it really does make us all play in the same sandbox, I think.
No, we had 4 full-time sales managers. Their job was to go after ICW business.
That's great. And then tell us again, what does ICW stand for?
In conjunction with. So in conjunction with, so if it's the American Bar Association, it could be West Publications, it could be any number of the software companies, it's whoever supplies a given group. And I actually have a couple corporations that have their top vendors that they buy from. And the vendors will love to enjoy sponsoring different events because it gets them in front of their host company.
And so thinking about that from a contracting perspective, if it's not necessarily co-location, so the Westin Core organization would be responsible for their own room and their F&B tickets and everything, you would have essentially a separate ticket and contract for them, but it would come under our, master services, for so to speak.
Yep, it would be on that hotel, or the client, the vendor would actually pay for their own event or their own portion of the event, the only part that they're sponsoring. But then we take that amount of money and credit that towards the F&B minimum. So
would it hurt us if they didn't meet their minimums or for some reason they, rang the bell and ran?
Yeah, typically what I would do is whenever I'm doing F&B minimums, I take what my actual spend was, and for contracting purposes, I try to be maybe 75% of that. If a client or if the vendor is saying we want to sponsor $100,000 worth of sponsorship, I might put it in at maybe half of that. Okay, I'm very conservative just because things do change. Schedules change, budgets change, everything changes, and we don't want to have, this is incremental revenue from a hotel standpoint, but we don't want to put a big number out there that realistically we're not going to hit.
And then thinking a little bit back about the minimizing the breakout space and kind of trying to reuse the general sessions. So, one of the issues that I run into quite frequently and some of our clients have is they want to reuse the general session, but in order to turn the room, we've got it in the morning and let's say it's theater style seating for the big opening keynote. And then we want to take it and turn it into rounds. What is the average expectation of time that, let's say, a 3,000 person room should take to actually take and turn so that we're pacing that in order to schedule our run of show correctly?
As much as you can, if you're going to reuse the general session, what I definitely would recommend is having it one set throughout the day. So all you have to do is open and close walls. Most of those walls are on huge tracks, or maybe 4 to 6 inches thick. They're heavy. And they shoot down the tracks and you lock them down in place and lock them into each other. It takes maybe 20 minutes to get them all secured correctly. Okay, but you don't want to go real fast because people can get hurt and things are moving around. So if you can avoid changing the room, that's the best. If you need to change the room, ideally, if you can go, probably allow even an hour, hour and a half to do a full turn. In the hotels, we call it the all hands on deck tour, where all the sales managers, catering managers, front desk, everybody who is available would go to the ballroom to help with the turn. So we would do it, but ideally we want to be able to minimize that just so we can, have a good turn without getting a lot of people in the wrong department.
Increasing your liability insurance or mine.
I did have changed huge rooms in less than 15, 20 minutes. And that's very tricky, but it can be done. Yeah.
And then thinking about it, let's say I've built out my main stage. When I worked at the National Speakers Association, the main stage was this nice, big, beautiful, or let's say if you're like in a Gaylord property where some of the stages are built in. How do you do that and reuse the space knowing that, because typically they don't always have an air wall that can cover that stage up. Do the air walls go sideways around, or is it just like, and in the back, we have a lovely stage no one's talking about?
Sure. And sometimes you have to do that where you just leave the stage and just dark and you use everything but that stage section, if you need to do it. Sometimes, depending on what the configuration of the walls are, sometimes you can actually move a wall right in front of the stage, or if you're going from a huge general session to say 5 breakouts, what a lot of times you'll do on the staging, you actually do a pipe and drape right in front of the stage, just to take attention away from it and just turn off the lights in that one area.
And then the last question was thinking about where you want to ask for the, that's the next one that's coming up. So we won't come in because it was one that came in so that like if I'm coming in and I'm trying to get my catered F&B, sometimes I ask for the menus beforehand, but then my menus, when I go to confirm it at the BEO, prices have changed and shift to change even though I have it down in my contract. So we won't get to put the cart before the horse. So
sure. I will get into that in just a second. Okay. Go ahead. Anyway, so the main thing is don't be afraid to negotiate. We want your business. We need your business. You come in, you bring me catering. You are somebody we love. Again, I've got all this meeting space down the stairs so I can fill all those sleeping rooms upstairs. So if you're doing catering, you are in a power position. It's a massive amount of your master account. What many people do, the planners don't negotiate it. It can all be negotiated. Don't be afraid about that because we hear it all the time, whether you're just trying to meet a budget or you're trying to raise money for a fundraiser, whatever you need to do, just we're aware of it. We know how it works. So let us know what you need to spend and we can probably design something to come up with a good program for you. Said meals, breaks, and receptions are all huge expenses. Negotiate them when you negotiate the contract. And if you do say, and we'll talk about this in some cases, I like putting in, if I have a budget, a group that has a very strict budget, I will put the firm menu item and the firm price in the contract. And it's all there. So it is, don't be afraid of asking for it because we in the hotel business, we hear about that all the time. In catering, like I said, meeting room rental service charges are income with no assigned expenses. So if I put 10,000 at my top line, I get to put 10,000 on my bottom line. So that's 100% profit. And it's called a GAAP, a generally accepted accounting principle, that all of them have the same, all hotels have basically the same P&L. So what you have to do is if you got all this income at the top line, it's negotiable because it is 100% profit. Meeting room rental, I would typically have a problem paying any meeting room rental if I'm bringing in sleeping rooms and catering. Service charges right now, some hotels are trying 26, 25, 24%. I had one for next year that's guaranteed at 19. It can be done. You just got to be able to negotiate it. On your RFP, I always ask for floor plans, catering, and audiovisual menus, just to get an idea of what I'm going to spend. That is very important also. When you meet with your sales manager, this is a good point. Get the catering manager and convention service manager involved because in all likelihood, sales managers get hopped around, moved around all over the place. I moved every year and a half to a new hotel. And sales managers do that, where catering and convention service managers, they're a little more stable. So what they'll do is they don't get moved around a lot. So when you speak with the CS manager during the site visit, when your group comes, say a year later, he or she's probably still going to be there, where the sales manager is long gone. Okay, so I always like having those two in on the visit. Catering CS managers have sales and upselling goals. Okay, they want to take what they've got to sell. Catering has to do their own sales for weddings and whatnot. Upselling from convention services, they'll say, if you want to have a chicken dinner, I can try to sell you a steak. If you want to do steak, I'll do a surf and turf. I will try to upsell. And as long as you can work with the budget, if your budget is flexible, we're going to see if we can get you a good deal. There's 2 steps to managing your catering. Number 1, negotiate catering, pricing, and value-added items. And number 2, the wrap-up and accounting. So go ahead. Or do you have any questions or anything at this point?
No, the one we had came in for the catering. So you you covered that one. We were good.
Sure. Okay. There are some things. This is actually where you are going to send out the PowerPoint. So hold on to this slide. Get it when you see it. be sure to look at it. Be sure to see that you can. It is very good to negotiate this stuff. Again, catered food is 40% profit. Beverage means, I'm saying like Cokes and coffee and that sort of thing. Alcohol is 75% profit. Okay, there's a couple things anyone on this call can do. They can, number one, negotiate pricing and just say the menu's TBD, that they have a dinner not to exceed $40 or $50 plus plus, or whatever the number might be. Be sure to have that in the contract. Negotiate percentage discounts. A lot of times hotels will say, we'll give you 10% off the published menu, 20%, 15%, whatever it is. Most important thing there is make sure you've got a copy of the menu that they're discounting. So if they're saying that we're going to negotiate or discount the 2019 menu, make sure you keep a copy of the 2019 menu in the file so you can see what is the current price, and then if you apply the discount, where does that put you? As for customized menu, hotel people, we love this stuff because we get bored. We have a very short attention span, okay? We like doing some custom work. So I will get with the executive chef and I'll get with our sous chef and purchasing department and say, what's cool, what's fun, what's interesting? You know, ask for seasonal, farm to table, action stations, choice of entree, dual entrees, okay? There's a couple of things that you can save money and come up with a good menu. Plus, you're letting the hotel people play a little bit. And we do like to do that. So if you can bring that in and introduce that during the negotiations, that's something we like to do. Also, is that if you want to save some money, it's what we call menu matching. And when I was in catering, we were actually encouraged to say that on this given Tuesday, we had 1,000 people for lunch in one ballroom, and they're going to have cheesecake for dessert. So what we would do is every other lunch that day, we try to sell cheesecake. Try to get everybody to go cheesecake, because that way we don't have to come up with separate desserts, when in fact, all you have to do is, dessert's dessert, realistically. So you can ask your catering manager or convention service manager, you can say, what else are you serving that day for the entree, the menu, for dessert, whatever it might be. If we menu match that, can we get a discount on our cover price? You can ask for that. A lot of hotels will do that because it's in our best interest not to have to change separate entrees, separate vegetables, separate desserts, okay? Also, you can ask for nonprofit. A lot of hotels have a nonprofit, a church, a social service menu that they can extend. Veterans menu, educational, social service, senior or junior menu. A lot of times they have something like this, but you gotta know to ask for it. Actually, Ritz-Carlton has one, they call it the pineapple menu. And the pineapple menu is basically Ritz-Carlton level high quality food, but it's slightly smaller portions and slightly different ingredients. So basically they can extend a very nice entree, very nice meal at a slightly discounted rate, which for Ritz-Carlton is very good. As for a seasonal menu, why? Well, in some places people are having steaks and chicken and all sorts of hot items for a summer lunch. If you're having a summer lunch event or a luncheon for your meeting, there's no reason to have a big menu. You go with something light. Comp space with the F&B minimum, okay? That's really important. Make sure anyone on this call, if you are coming in at that 100 square foot or less meeting space, number one, or the 125 or more per day in catering, you should not be paying any meeting room rental. And bear in mind, the way hotels work, we have the first quote, we have a fallback, and then the lose it quote. So by the time, if we give you the first number with meeting room rental, do bear in mind that we do have two more steps that we can either discount it a little bit or comp it all together, because we don't want to lose the business. But we're going to start with a quote. Okay, and negotiate the service charge. As I said, it's 20 to 24%, 25 and 26%. That adds up, number one. Plus, most states are now tax on tip. So if you got the menu item plus the service charge, the tax is in addition to the menu and the service charge. So it gets very expensive. So do be sure to negotiate all of this. Very good. Go ahead.
So we had a couple of questions coming in about the special menus. So let's say I have a lot of gluten-free or a lot of halal or kosher. So in some hotels, people are the hotels have tried to charge extra for what is an allergy base. So how do we negotiate around that?
If you would, first of all, if they're saying it's a big problem to do vegan, vegetarian, low salt, anything basically, the only exception is kosher. And because kosher is strict block kosher, I mean, when I was at the Hyatt O'Hare and the Hyatt Chicago, we had a kosher kitchen, so we could do that in-house. Most other hotels, they have to bring it in from an outside vendor. So that is typically, there'll be a premium on that. But the way people on this call, if you know you need vegan or vegetarian, whatever it might be, tell the hotel in the very beginning. Say, this is what we've got. I need, of the 1,000 people, I need 50 vegan, 50 vegetarian, whatever it is. Make sure you got that even in the RFP. And if they say there's a premium, I would either say, no, we're not paying a premium, or take a look at another hotel.
I like that a lot. And then on there, you had nonprofit, veterans. How about the government rates? I know we've talked previously about the hotel procurement piece, but is there a government rate for food and beverage?
Typically, it's interesting. Government rates is interesting. They have a government rate for cater or for sleeping rooms. Typically, for banquets, they don't have that. A lot of times, though, they have to do a government all-inclusive, where you have to show it as meeting room rental, and included in the meeting room rental is the coffee breaks and the meals, which is interesting, but that's how they do it. So what you want to do is make sure that you know what your budget of any government employees on this call. Make sure you've got a per person price in mind, and tell the hotel that. Say, we need, this is what's got to be, including the meeting space, the audio visual, the AM PM breaks, everything in one per person price.
And then thinking about the menu matching. So let's say I'm wanting to set my menu out. I have a lot of specialty foods, so I need to have it set probably a month before so that we have time to change it. How far out do the hotels know what they're going to be able to menu match against, and who are the best people inside the hotel to be talking to? Is that something where I just go straight to the catering manager? And
I think, yeah, definitely. If it's a convention, it'll be the convention service manager. And typically what happens is that within, say, 6, 9, even 12 months out, anything that's not sold by the group sales department is able to be sold by, say, the catering department, called catering free sale. And depending on the size of the hotel and, you know, the critical booking cycle, as we say, sometimes we say whatever what it's our current month plus 12. So anything from our current month plus the next 12 months is free sale, or catering can book anything they want. So they can book that, and if I have any other meetings to be booked in that 12-month window, you can ask to menu match, because by then you will have menus pretty well assigned. You'll be able to see what is booked by the other groups. And what I always do is say, if I match that, can I take $5 off the menu? And $5 off the menu price doesn't sound like a lot, but if it's $5 times 100 people plus,
yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like quite a big discount to me when you start thinking about head charges. My goodness.
Oh, you look at some of these banquet menus at nice hotels. I just did one at an Atlanta airport hotel. It was $65 plus per person for basically a chicken lunch.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's a fair amount. And I ended up getting a 10% discount by menu matching it. So instead of $65, it ended up being like $58.
So one of the things that you haven't talked about yet, and maybe you're getting to it, but they had come in, what about coffee breaks? Because coffee per gallon, tea per gallon, and some hotels now are charging water per gallon for the hot water. So
we'll actually get into that in just a minute. Coming up to coffee breaks. Coffee breaks are amazing. Just briefly on that, is I think my championship is the Hilton San Francisco, and it was $150 plus per gallon. Yeah. So that's like $210 a gallon. There's only 20 cups in a gallon. Okay, so this is $10 a cup, basically, for banquet coffee. And you think for $10 you should have maybe a shot or some Baileys or Bushmills in it, but it's very expensive. But I like to negotiate that. If I've got a heavy coffee drinking group, it's the sort of thing I actually put that in the RFP. And I say, I don't want necessarily the high end, the Starbucks, you know, at the $120 a gallon plus. I'd rather do just a house blend, do the house blend, and I could still make money, $40 and $50, $60 a gallon, which is still high, but that's more reasonable.
Yeah, and I love that. I've never thought about that before, putting in the RFP and saying, I don't want your fancy coffee. I want your, your drip coffee, because half the time, are you actually getting the fancy coffee? I mean, we've all taken a sip and gone, that doesn't necessarily taste like Starbucks.
And then a lot of groups, actually I do a lot with senior groups and ethnic groups, and a lot of different groups, a lot of women's groups, they don't necessarily like Starbucks or the very high-end deep roasted coffees because they say they taste bitter. So regular garden variety coffee, you can save a ton of money. And again, that's why I always like to have all this spelled out in the RFP before you sign a contract. Because if you sign a contract, basically you've lost all your leverage.
Very true.
Okay.
Right. That's all the questions for now.
Okay.
Next.
Go ahead. The other thing to talk about, like I said, we talked about how pricing before, and then also you can negotiate value-added items. Value-added items are comps and upgrades. They're charged back to the hotel. Either they've got them already in-house where they don't cost the hotel anything, number one, or they're charged back to the hotel at cost. And there's a little secret, you know, people are not supposed to know this, but when I was director of sales, we have the S&P, which is the sales and promotion budget. So if I want to comp dinner, if I want to comp wine, if I want to comp a reception, if I want to comp anything for my clients, I can do that on my budget as director of sales, and that doesn't affect my average rate as a hotel, doesn't affect my rooms. I've got a budget already in there for this, and it's basically charged to my budget at cost. So it realistically doesn't cost me a whole lot anyway. So be sure to ask, can the hotel sponsor some items? Can they sponsor an extra glass of wine or whatever, dessert, that sort of thing? These are some of the things you can ask for. Number one, I always ask for centerpieces. If I'm charged $65 plus for a chicken lunch, I want a mirror tile, votive candles, a bud vase, something. I want something that jazz up the table. And if the client of the hotel says that it's going to cost you 20 bucks a table, you'll say no. It's going to cost you, the hotel, 20 bucks a table, because I'm already paying $65 plus for a chicken lunch for 10 people at that table. So every table is almost $800 worth of sales. So I should get a mirror tile. Props, themes, linen, napkin upgrade, buffet lights, uplights, logo decor, all of that hotels have in their banquet storage office. Any of the larger major hotels, we'd have a lot of times the basic decor that we do have a nautical theme, or we could do a Mexican theme or an Italian theme, or just kind of the basics, just to add a little bit of flair to the buffet. You should not be paying for it. You can ask for it. A lot of times hotels have it right there saying, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. It'll look nice. Because again, we hotel guys, we will take the path of least resistance, but if we could do something cool that doesn't take a lot of time and trouble and make it look nice, we'll do that for you. But you got to know to ask. Easels, stanchions, risers, podiums, flags, backdrops, all of that stuff most have in their hotel. I always got a kick out of this. An easel, we could be leaning against the wall in the banquet manager's office, and somehow magically when it leaves the office and goes onto a meeting room floor, it turns into a $50 a day rental, when it spent most of its time leaning against the wall in the banquet manager's office. Be sure to ask for it, whatever you want. If you need any of this stuff, typically we hotel guys, we will take care of it as long as we know in advance. As long as we know that we've got enough in-house on property, we can make this happen. If you want to add it that day, number one, we may not have it. Number two, there could be a rental or setup charge. So be sure to ask for all that. A drink ticket or house wine, that's very commonly done. I typically ask for that. A lot of my social service group, a lot of my association business, I'll ask that this particular dinner selection includes a glass of house wine, and I ask the sales director if he'd like to come in and do a toast. And a lot of times they'll do that. I typically will get the wine, sometimes the toast, but at least I will get the house wine with dinner. And upgraded desserts. A lot of times, you know, we do cheesecake, or we do bread pudding, or we do the basics. Say you want to do something interesting, do something with your logo on it, do something interesting, let us know what you got in mind. You know, get a dessert book, just get a Joy of Cooking and see what they've got, and see where you see something would be attractive. If you let us know what you've got in mind, we can come up with a price. Typically, it'll be the same price as the regular menu, but you've customized it. That didn't cost you anything. Okay, so go ahead.
We had a couple of questions come in. So I like this one a lot. One of the people, however, also likes this, but they were a little concerned. Sharon said that if we keep adding all of these on from a nitpicky like negotiation, like my list of nice to have and must haves is getting pretty big, right? So does this work against me in a larger negotiation stance, or is this just a good place where I can start picking things away as they start taking things out? that make sense?
I'd say put it, I see RFPs, and my RFP, it's all bullet points. And I will probably have a dozen bullet points just with rooms. And I need a 1 per 40, and I need 2 upgrades, and I need 3 staff rooms, and I got the normal stuff for rooms. But then for food and beverage, if it's a food and beverage item, I would say pick what's most important to you and just tell us what's most important. That you want centerpieces, you want custom linen, you will need easels at each of the doors. You know, whatever it is, just tell us exactly what you want. Don't write us a book. Basically just make it as a shopping list. And what we can do is we can typically, I'd rather have it all in front of me and say, yes, we can do all this stuff, but we don't have enough podiums. Or whatever, you know, whatever works for you, tell me exactly what you need, and I'd rather have that in front, and I'm not going to be offended. I'd rather have it in front so I can coordinate it with other groups that are in-house than try to scramble at the last minute.
So the other question was labor. So, you know, in some hotel properties, let's think about New York, Philly, Vegas, you run into your labor issues. Is it where I can negotiate both the item for these value-added items and the labor at the same time, or is that something separate as part of my bullet list?
In catering, I try to avoid any labor. I think labor cost for catering, if it's a setup and tear down and it's a whole nother, you know, pipe and drape and a trade show, that's a whole nother, again, the Hyatt O'Hare, we had the stagehands to get it to the dock, and the dock got it, you know, the electricians got from the dock to the room and everything, every union. We had 5 unions every to work with, okay? That's a whole nother discussion. For any labor having to do with catering, that is negotiable. I have a problem if you have, and we'll talk about this later, is that if you have a bartender who pours $500 worth of liquor, you should not be paying $100 for the bartender. Once that bartender gets to 500, that should be a comp bartender. A carver, I always marvel that they're charging $50 per person for whatever the steak and, you know, the steamship round and the chicken or turkey, whatever it is. Plus you got to pay for a guy to cut it. And realistically, you're already paying for the product plus. So, and you can guarantee that carver is not making the $250 plus. So that is going right to the bottom line. But any labor for catering, I would definitely challenge any of that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Anything else? Right. And these are bonus ways to save money. A couple of these we've talked about already. And these are kind of my little fast and dirty notes. So you can actually do this, take this with you. And this is stuff, how to save money right now. Okay, number 1, get away from bottled water. So I always got a kick out of that, you know, that Evian spelled backwards is naive. Okay, the French actually are selling water to us. It's an amazing idea, but don't get into bottled waters anymore. I think most people are okay with the water pitchers and the bubblers, the little tap things. Those are fine. Coffee. Ask for the house brand in regular cups. A lot of times, like I said, as I said earlier, ask for, you want just regular coffee, whatever it might be. You don't need Starbucks, whatever designer brand it might be. And then find out how big the coffee cups are. Maybe during the site inspection, is it a little 6-ounce normal cup, or is this big bucket mugs? And these bucket mugs, there's no way somebody's going to drink the whole thing without it getting cold. So what happens is they have to reload the cup 2 and 3 times. And what happens is there, when you're paying $100 a gallon plus, you can get into a lot of revenue very quickly. So I always ask for that house brand in regular cups. Order by consumption. I count the Cokes. Okay, and when they go out, all right, 200 Cokes going out, I want to count how many Coke come back, and I want to see that they're doing an accurate count. When the count was easier, when Cokes were, you know, $1 each, $2 each, whatever it is, that's fine. Some hotels now are $7 and $8 for a soda. So it's $7, $8 plus, so $10 out the door for a can of Coke. And the thing is, a lot of attendees will have one while they're there and then slip a couple in their purse, you know, or in their bag, in their briefcase, and for roadies back in the room. And you'll end up buying their sodas for later on. So I always ask to do a count there. Skip the salad and soup course. A lot of times, you know, a lot of times they have this multi-course production for a lunch. And a lot of times, you know, people eat lunch, is pretty much eat lunch and go back to work. So do the same, and once you trim a salad or soup course, get a discount off the menu price. Serve the lunch dessert at the PM break. That works very well. A lot of times you just say, we're going to do lunch, dessert will be served when we do the afternoon coffee. And people kind of like that because it's a little more refreshing later on than trying to do a dessert with the lunch. Outside AV equipment, our company is okay with no service fee. I love doing this. I have several AV companies and I have them bid on everything. The people on this call, when you're doing that, make sure that in your contract, it says that you can bring in outside equipment or an outside company with no service fee. Make sure that's in there, and all the hotels have that clause somewhere in their contract library, but you got to know to ask for it. Okay, that's how to save money in meetings and meals. Now for receptions, there's a couple things here. Skip the top shelf. There's no reason in the world to be paying premium and deluxe premium prices for reception drinks. Okay, there's no reason in the world. If you have somebody who only drinks Grey Goose or whatever they got, their only designer liquor, you can keep one bottle of that on one of the bars, or just introduce the bartender to that one person who has to have Grey Goose, okay, and everyone else gets house pour. But what I would do is, number one, you could save a ton of money for that. Number two, negotiate bartender fees. I talked about that already. If you have $500 to $750 per bar, you should not be paying for the bartender. The bartender is already paid and he is getting a percentage of the pour, so you should not be paying for him because he doesn't make that little fee anyway. That goes right to the house. Server fees, carvers, outdoor setup fees. Outdoor setup fees, let me give you another secret. When I do outdoor setup fees from a hotel standpoint, I'm saving meeting space for another group. So the idea of my charging you for an outdoor setup fee is actually kind of double dealing, because I'm actually going to be coming out ahead by not having to set up a meeting room anyway. Number one, unless if it's something like you need extra heaters, or if you need some kind of extra staging or something so extraordinary, you should not be paying any outdoor setup fees. Stand-up tables for receptions. I always say if you have a big sit-down, 5 and 6 foot tables, you're going to get what we call campers. They're going to sit there all day. They're not going to move. They're going to be hitting the buffet back and forth. And for a reception, you want to have a little more traffic and not have that. So I would definitely go with stand-up tables, the high boys, as we call them. Lines at the bars are actually okay. 3, 4, maybe 5 people deep is okay. People are talking when they're there and they're waiting for a drink. It's not a big deal. If you have a good drinking group, I would say staff it up so you can keep it at 3 or 4 deep. Once you get past that, though, it starts to be annoying. So typically I figure out 1 bartender per 75 people is a good ratio. So think about that. Next one is interesting. Bartenders use pour spouts versus a free pour. A pour spout, they can actually monitor it's an ounce, a quarter, whatever it is, and you're going to get a more accurate pour. If it's a free pour, a lot of times people slip a couple bucks to the bartender. And as a former bartender, I didn't have a problem with that, but you're going to end up spending a lot more for your drinks. No tip jars on the bars. No tip jars. Your attendees should not be putting money in the tip jar when you're already paying the plus on the bar. And that's important also. I make sure that those don't appear. Action stations and server passed hors d'oeuvres. If you want to save money, do that. If you do a buffet, people will load their plates, only eat 80% of what they put on their plate. You'll throw away 20 to 25% of it. That's how it works. So if you want to save some money, you have some action stations and servers, just pass hors d'oeuvres that way. Seafood is expensive. A lot of people say, well, we got to have the shrimp buffet. I would really question that, number one. But if you do want it and have to have it, the boss wants it or whatever, I'd kind of tuck it away in the corner. Make it a degree of difficulty to get there because it gets very expensive. You're getting into $6 and $7 per shrimp to get just a shrimp cocktail. Wine brands are interesting. A lot of times the beverage manager, they'll go from one brand to another, Hyatt wide or Hilton wide or Marriott wide. So a lot of big companies have got discontinued wine in their inventory. If the people here have got a way to, if you want to save some money there, just ask for that. A lot of times it's fine wine. It's just they have a new marketing arrangement with a different vintner than they had before. Okay, is there any questions here?
No questions.
Okay, very good. Go ahead and click there. And the next thing we've got is the insider tips for contract. Okay, so we talked about negotiating the pricing and negotiating the value added. You learned a little bit about the food and why we do charge so much we do. It's amazing to me that we charge what we do in a hotel, but we don't get to keep any of that money in catered F&B. But these are ways where you can save money right off the bat. Start with a thorough RFP. List exactly what you need to book your group. And like I said, I always put it in, here's my rooms division, and here's my food and beverage division. One thing, actually, let me tell you, look at tompasha.com. Everybody on this call, look at tompasha.com. There's a section there that says free downloads, and there's several RFP examples there, and you can see take whatever you like. You can download whatever you like, so feel free to steal. And there's a 14-page site inspection list. There's some other really good programs there, so jot that down. It's tompasha.com, and it does have a good RFP that you can take what I've got and maybe incorporate some of that to what you already work with. So I always talk about that, a good RFP. Shop several hotels. Tell the hotels they're being shopped. We're a competitive group of people. If we, being the Hyatt guy, I get to compete with the Marriott guy, the Hilton guy, and the Westin guy every day. And we know each other, we respect each other, but we also like to beat them. So let us know that it is a competitive bid, and you'll get more competitive. Pricing, menus, comps, staging, podiums, backdrops, and other equipment should all be negotiated. Make sure that's all on your RFP. If you need it, I can do a deal up front, and I could put that into the contract, which I prefer to do than to have it surprise the group later on, surprise my hotel, because I've got to sell you on coming to my hotel, but then I've got to coordinate it with my hotel when you come for your group. So I want to make sure that everything is spelled out and priced out correctly. Pricing, service charges, setup charges, all shown on the RFP, contracts, and BEOs. And the most important thing here is make sure what you have in your RFP, what I typically do is I'll have my specs, and what I'll have the hotel do is complete the specs, saying yes, no, whatever they can do. And we go from the RFP, and all we do is we cut and paste the completed RFP items, take it from the RFP, put it right on the contract. We just cut paste right onto the other. So we're not hunting through a 20-page contract to see the items that are covered in the RFP. And lastly, once it goes from the contract and then the BEOs are generated, make sure all of the bullet points that started off, again, on the RFPs and contracts, make sure they all found their way over to the BEOs. And you've got to check and recheck to make sure you're all there, because things will get added or deleted, sometimes intentionally, sometimes accidentally, but you want to make sure everything that you contracted is going to be there. Make sure the contract items are shown on the BEOs. Get BEOs 7 to 10 days prior. I like getting them about that far out, just because there's always going to be changes. I'll find out I need some extra vegan or extra kosher or whatever it is, or I've got to add a table, that sort of thing. Whatever I need to do, I've got enough time where we're not going to press the next day. I've got enough time to allow for the changes that I know are going to happen. Okay, and go ahead and click. Catering wrap up and accounting. Okay, so we talked about how we organize it, how to negotiate pricing, how to negotiate value-added items, and now how to wrap it all up. A couple things. This is make sure that what you have spec'd and contracted and BEO'd, make sure everything is accurate. That's the most important part. A couple ways to start off. Get guaranteed menu pricing before you sign the contract. Check it against the BEO and banquet checks. So you've got whatever's in the contract ends up on the BEO and on your banquet check. Check the BEOs. Make sure the set, the guaranteed number, the menu items, and the price, make sure everything is correct. Bottle count. This is interesting. A lot of groups, I have a couple groups that are exceptional drinkers. And so what I'll do is I'll actually be there when the bars are going out, and I'll see the bottle count go out. They'll see how many bottles and how many bars are going out to take care of this group. And then I'm going to come in and do the count when they bring it back in. I want to see how much was actually consumed. And there is no magic high-tech way of doing this. What happens is we basically hold the bottle up to the light and we estimate it's half a bottle. And if the group drank half a bottle, what does that turn into as far as revenue? You can actually take a look here. You have 1/5. A fifth, which is the 1.75, is 10/10 at 3 shots each. So we will kind of mentally divide this bottle up into tenths. Okay, we know we get 3 shots out of each tenth, which basically is $30 or 30 shots in one bottle. Okay, if I'm charging $10 per drink, which is very cheap, but if I am getting $10 per drink times 30 shots, that's a $300 bottle of booze retail, but it's only a $30 cost. So that means I've got 10% beverage cost, 90% profit. And that's how beverage bars work. You could spend a ton of money there. So what you want to do is make sure, and again, there is a certain amount of rounding and it's not a science at all, but make sure that whatever you're going to spend is accurate, okay? As I said earlier, house brands to save money, call brands for the EIPs. We talked about that a little bit ago. Make sure you do that. I actually do this when I bring a calculator, and I'll actually bring a calculator and check the math, because I'll find the percentages are wrong, or the tax on tip is wrong, or just the basic math. People are just doing it. They're in a hurry, whatever. They've got 2 and 3 other events going off that night, but I want to see the check that night. I want to check the math. I'm going to sign off and exit out where they can't add anything to it, and then I'll sign it. Okay, as I said, review and sign banquet checks at every event, food, beverage, audiovisual. Tell the staff you need to meet them after every event. And then just as kind of a funny aside, I've had several clients go through the reception, maybe had too much to drink. So don't have too much to drink when we're doing the check. We want to make sure that it's accurate and you can do your best work while you're not been sampling the product here. Anyway, go ahead. And then finally, catering. Catering is a fun part of the business. It really is. Not everybody realizes this, but I do. I've always kind of enjoyed this part. Again, a lot of it started off from working in hotels and working in kitchens since I was a kid, and learn some basic skills. Take a class, read some books, become a foodie. One of the best things people do now. I mean, if you want to look up how to sharpen a knife, how to do a different cuts and knife skills, that sort of thing. Get the Escoffier. I've got the Escoffier cookbook. I still look at stuff like this. So kind of enjoy and appreciate the idea of catering. Spend some time in the kitchen. Actually, if you want to see during your site inspection, I ask to go through the kitchen with the sales manager. I want to see that it's clean and quiet and it looks good and everything's tight and everything's a good looking presentation. Whatever you see in the back of the house, that's what you're going to see in the front of the house. So make sure that the kitchen is sharp and it looks very good. During the site visit, what I always do also is that I don't want to sit in the restaurant and order lunch in the restaurant. I'll ask the sales manager to make 1 extra plate up of whatever they're serving for lunch. Just whatever they're serving this. I just want to see that. Bring me 1 plate. I want to pull the cover off and see what does a banquet menu look like. I want to see what does the entrees that look well put together. Is it hot? That sort of thing. I want to see the quality of the banquet because I know the restaurant's going to be good. Okay. And then learn to see the banquet from the hotel side and you can plan better events. And go ahead. And lastly, as I said, if there's anything I can do, we covered a ton of material. We're going to send out the PowerPoint so you see all of this. But if there's anything I can do for you, if you'd like to know some more about catering, if you need some help on site selection, contracts, any of that stuff, be sure to give me a call. And just even have a question on any of the stuff we've covered today. And again, I appreciate everyone coming. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you get a lot out of it. And hopefully we'll stay in touch. You have a great day.
We had a couple of questions come in. We got 3 minutes, so we can grab them. So someone said, don't you do longer day workshops? And I remember you saying that you do something where you actually bring them into the kitchen itself, because if they don't work through someone like you, how do you get yourself invited to the back end? Because many hotels don't necessarily like having the planners back there unless it's carefully orchestrated.
Oh yeah, no, and when I was a sales manager, I used to orchestrate it. I used to actually have them, especially if you came into my hotel for a breakfast appointment, I would take you back in the kitchen just as we were pulling baked goods out of the oven.
Oh, that's smart.
I could sell you, I could close that in a heartbeat. But yeah, I would just ask the sales manager. A lot of times the sales manager say, most of the time they'll say yes. Okay, right. They'll say, well, let me check with the chef. And a lot of times they'll say, that's fine. Because chefs, we do like to, we hotel guys do like to show off. So don't go in there saying you're going to do a white glove inspection. Just say you've always been intrigued by kitchens. Can you take a walk back in the kitchen? And a lot of times the sales manager will be okay on that.
Yeah, no, I was at a site visit in Anaheim back in May, and there was this huge festival going on. And I was like, I don't want to travel because there's this huge festival going on. Like, we're just going to eat here at the hotel. And I'm like, I don't really want to eat in the restaurant either. And like, no, the chef's going to cook for us. And it's really that it does distinguish the properties very quickly from it.
And I've had a couple very high-end large corporations and associations. A lot of high-end hotels have what they call the chef's table. And during the site inspection, I'll be there as the planner, but I might have the president or president-to-be or whoever it is, the officers with me. And so I'll ask to see if the hotel can arrange a chef's table. We're actually in the kitchen, and the chef is doing something, their version of it in the kitchen. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And then the final question is, you had mentioned a couple times throughout that you had contract or BEO terms where you could copy and paste. Are those all at tompasha.com? Or
Yes.
Is there somewhere else? Okay. And then are they actually taken from like the Hyatt and the Hilton, kind of like your contracting one is, or are there other places we should be looking for that information to
I'd say
take?
go ahead and take a look. Take a look at the townpasture.com. A lot of that on the RFP and contract clauses are basically, a lot of the clauses are stuff that I've been amassing or collecting for quite a while. And a lot of it is actually some Hyatt and Ritz-Carlton contract clauses, that sort of thing. So you can see what some hotels do. Most important thing is that if you have something you want to add to the contract, just ask the hotel person. In all likelihood, we've got it. I have a couple of what they call the user agreements where the hotels have got an entire volume of their contract library and say what clauses they can accept and what clauses they can work with. All you gotta do is say, do you have a catering clause with a locked-in menu price? Or do you have a guaranteed coffee clause or whatever you'd like to put in there? In all likelihood, we've got one. Okay.
I like it. All right. Well, thank you, Tom. As always, you throw all the knowledge bombs down and then some. It's always a pleasure. You can catch him if you want to meet him live. He's speaking at lots of Connect Marketplace events and MPI events, or he's there in sunny in Orlando, which I think is one of the only sunny places right now.
Yep.
Catch him at tompasha.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Very good. Thank you. Have a good day.